My absolute favorite kind of movie is one that can make you laugh and cry equally hysterically. Lady Bird works brilliantly as a coming-of-age comedy with plenty of quotable lines, but it also has more than a few devastating moments that will have you ugly crying. Wes Anderson is one of my favorite directors because he walks a really fine line between comedy and tragedy, and I think I've made my feelings about Everything Everywhere All at Once pretty clear. One of the most perfect examples of a movie that captures the entire emotional spectrum with big laughs and big feels, a movie I find myself coming back to like once a month, a movie that will warm your heart, then break it, then put it back together and warm it again, is Little Miss Sunshine. Little Miss Sunshine starts off with a familiar road movie premise as a family reluctantly hit the road to get the youngest child to the beauty pageant of her dreams. But it's a much deeper exploration of family dynamics and the communication amongst relatives and just what it means to be human than your average road trip movie. As with any movie about a family, Little Miss Sunshine wouldn't work if you didn't believe you were watching a real family. You have to buy that you're watching a dysfunctional family crammed into a van together and not just a group of actors. Unfortunately, that is the case. The Hoover family is completely believable. This is an absolutely incredible ensemble. There's no dead weight in the cast. Toni Collette is typically fantastic in the role of Cheryl, the downtrodden, overstressed, overwhelmed mother, a part Collette has played many times. Cheryl is the most level-headed member of the family, mediating arguments and keeping everyone together. But at the same time, she's not just a generic placid mom character. She's still human and prone to her own outbursts. As usual, Colette's performance is so organic and real that it doesn't look like acting. It doesn't look like an actor standing in front of a camera and playing a character. It just feels like you're dropping in on someone's life. Greg Kinnear is just as brilliant opposite Collette as Richard, the self-important dad pursuing a career as a motivational speaker, while she works overtime to keep them all afloat. Richard bores his family to tears with his 9-step refuse to lose program for success. The great irony of this character is that he's all about his ironclad rules for success, but the program itself is a failure. Richard has spent his whole life propping up winners and denigrating losers, and now he has to reckon with the fact that he is a loser himself. The most compelling characters have a lie they're telling themselves, and the lie Richard tells himself is that he's a winner. Kinnear does a terrific job of playing Richard's early denial, and an equally terrific job of playing the breakdown of his belief system, and his less than graceful acceptance of failure later on in the movie. At the beginning of the movie, Kinnear isn't afraid to be unlikable, and by the end of it, he's made Richard a much more endearing figure. Steve Carell gave audiences an early glimpse of his dramatic capabilities in the role of Frank, the depressed uncle recovering from a suicide attempt and trying to figure out a path forward. At the time, Carell had just started playing Michael Scott. In the same year, he played the highest regarded Proust scholar in the US, and a character who burned his foot on a George Foreman grill. Carell's performance in Little Miss Sunshine has the same lovable blend of hilarity and vulnerability that made his work in The Office so great. At first, Frank is miserable, stuck in a kind of existential limbo between wanting to die and failing to do so. But after reconnecting with his sister and bonding with her similarly miserable son, and seeing how much joy something as simple as dancing at a beauty pageant gives Olive, Frank comes to realize that maybe life isn't so bad after all. Paul Dano gives one of his greatest early performances as Dwayne, the angstiest of angsty teens. Obsessed with Nietzsche, Dwayne is taking a vow of silence until he can fulfill his dream of becoming a fighter pilot. Dano really leans into Dwayne's adolescent anger.
I hate you fucking people!
He's not a cutesy movie teenager, he rings true as a real teenager, even though Dano was in his early 20s during filming. Like any 15-year-old, Dwayne is raging at the world for no particular reason, and he can't stand the people around him. But he eventually warms up to them when he finally undergoes some real hardship and realizes he needs their love and support to get through it. Abigail Breslin became one of the youngest Oscar nominees of all time for her wonderful turn as Olive, earning the nod around the same age Tatum O'Neal was when she won for Paper Moon. Olive is the beacon of hope and optimism and childlike innocence that the movie hangs its message on. Everyone else has their own issues and insecurities and preoccupations, but Olive is completely pure of heart and inspires her family to view the world in a different way. Sometimes with child actors, you can see the mechanics of the kids hitting marks and reciting lines, which is fine, I mean they're kids, cut them some slack. But other times you get a really raw, honest, naturalistic performance, and Breslin's turn as Olive is an example of the latter. There's a ring of authenticity in all her scenes. In the opening frames when she watches former pageant winners with unbridled reverence, at the dinner table when she's curious about Frank's bandages.
Why did you want to kill yourself?
Well, there were a lot of reasons. Mainly, though, I fell in love with someone who didn't love me back. I was very much in love with him.
Him? It was a boy? And you fell in love with the boy?
Yes, I did. Very much so.
That's silly.
In the diner with the ice cream when Richard makes her self-conscious about her body, and everyone else steps in to make her feel better.
Wait! Stop! Don't eat it all.
Breslin reflects the best parts of humanity in her performance. When Dwayne is inconsolable and no one else can think of the right words to say to comfort him, Olive goes over and puts her arm around him and rests her head on his shoulder, and he immediately feels better. While Breslin lost Best Supporting Actress to Jennifer Hudson for her terrific work in Dreamgirls, which was arguably the lead role, not a supporting role, Alan Arkin won a long overdue Academy Award for his performance as Olive's grandpa, Edwin. Like most grandpas, Edwin is a bitter curmudgeon who's constantly complaining, and Arkin plays that part perfectly.
What's that, chicken? Every night it's the fucking chicken. Holy God almighty. Is it possible just once
Dad?
we could get something to eat for dinner around here that's not the goddamn fucking chicken?
Hey, Dad!
Everyone watching this character is reminded of their own grumpy grandparents. Edwin is easily the most cynical, cantankerous member of this family, but he also turns out to be one of the sweetest, especially to Olive.
Am I pretty?
You are the most beautiful girl in the whole world.
No, you're just saying that.
No, I'm not. I'm madly in love with you. And it's not because of your brains or your personality. It's because you're beautiful.
Richard has developed a program and a lecture series and written a whole book about the philosophy of winners and losers. But Edwin comes up with a better philosophy about winners and losers in a couple of seconds.
I don't want to be a loser.
You're not a loser. Where'd you get the idea you're a loser?
Because Dad hates losers.
Whoa. Back up a minute. You know what a loser is? A real loser is somebody that's so afraid of not winning, they don't even try.
A child beauty pageant is a great satirical setting because it's a quintessentially American tradition, and it's also a completely fucked up tradition. The hilarious irony of Olive's controversial dance is that the pageant's organizers are horrified, like their conservative values are being upended by this disgraceful rabble-rouser. But Olive's super freak choreography just highlights that they've built this whole event around sexualizing children. The running joke of the old beaten-up Volkswagen van needing a push start every time they set off is a great visual gag that gets a laugh every time. But it's also a beautiful metaphor for what all these characters are going through. They've all reached an impasse in their lives. Cheryl is overworked, having to financially support everyone herself. Richard's book has been rejected. Dwayne finds out he's colorblind, so he can't achieve his dream of flying fighter jets. And Frank is recovering from a suicide attempt after the love of his life ran off with his best friend and he lost his job. Every one of these characters is a car with a broken engine that needs a push from the whole family to get started again. When they start the journey, Olive and her grandpa are the only two people who aren't just going along for the ride because they have to. Olive's dream is to compete in Little Miss Sunshine, and Edwin can't wait to see his granddaughter do the dance choreography he spent weeks helping her with. But everyone else is there begrudgingly. Cheryl offers to drive her, Richard comes along because she can't make the 800-mile drive alone, and Dwayne and Frank are forced to join them because Dwayne is too young to stay at home alone, and Frank can't be left alone following his suicide attempt. So they all bundle into the van and buckle up for what promises to be a nightmarish journey with no satisfying payoff. But they all go through so much shit along the way and face their worst fears and have their lives turned upside down that by the time they get there, they're all living vicariously through Olive.
What is your daughter doing?
She's alright. She's kicking ass.
They want Olive to go out there and perform her heart out as much as she wants it for herself. So much so that when the organizers object and try to get Olive off the stage, the family all end up going up on the stage and dancing with her to show their support. This is the perfect culmination of the movie's emotional arcs. At the beginning of the film, the family are all but separate from each other. Cheryl and Richard's marriage is hanging together by a thread. Dwayne can't wait to leave home and join the Air Force. Frank is only staying with the family because it's a medical requirement. Edwin is only staying with them because he got kicked out of his retirement community for snorting heroin. And Olive lives in her own fantasy world. But in the end, they all come together and rally behind Olive. Their own dreams might have been dashed. Richard's book isn't getting published. Dwayne can't fly in the Air Force. The man Frank loves doesn't love him back. But they can help make hers a reality. Little Miss Sunshine is a quintessential feel-good film. You'll have a warm, fuzzy feeling by the time the end credits roll. But it's not all fluff. It goes to the deepest depths of despair and suffering before getting to the feel-goodery. It doesn't peddle any easy answers. It doesn't pretend everything is roses. It prepares audiences for a life of disappointment. Instead of assuring viewers that everything will be okay, it tells them it's okay for things to not be okay. It's better to fail than to not try at all. And no matter what happens, no matter what life throws at you, you're surrounded by people who love you and will be there for you. This is truly one of the most beautiful movies ever made. If you're going through a tough time, I guarantee Little Miss Sunshine will pick up your spirits. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked the video. Remember to like and subscribe and click on the little bell. And also seize the day and call your mom and be kind to yourself.